Well, we've had a few months. Bendis came all over the Superman books, and what do we think? Let's talk about it. So, for those of you maybe listening later, forgot about this marketing campaign, there was a big splash DC did called Bendis is Coming. And it was, this was the promo there. So that opening little, cold open teaser was not an offensive joke, I promise. I'm just referencing their own marketing, folks. That's all. But okay, so Bendis came and he, story goes that Bendis was, kind of basically offered up Batman or Superman, and Bendis would have been following up the Scott Snyder run, um, or he could take over Superman. And Bendis basically, everybody expected him to say he wanted Batman because of, kind of his, probably his successes with Jessica Jones and some of that kind of more street level hero. But to everyone's surprise, he took Superman, kind of wanting that challenge, and he defied expectations within the world. Well, I mean, you know what? This is probably going to be kind of critical to Bendis, so I apologize. I know there's a couple people who are big fans, and I think the guy is wonderful on a personal level. I have to say, Bendis has been more than positive to comic shops and to fans and getting encouragement for comics. So none of this at all is going to reflect on Bendis the person, who's really very nice. And I think, I mean, I don't like to make definitive statements like this, but definitely kind of in the top 10 ambassadors, people to comic shops, people who really honestly care about comics and want to push them. I'd say Bendis is in that top 10. He is a strong ally of shops and a strong ally of comic readers and people trying to sell comics. So much love, much support. All that is very, very true. So that none of what I'm about to say interferes with any of that. I've been critical in the past about, for lack of a better word, Bendis speak. This is, kind of the where all the characters sound exactly the same. And somebody pointed out last time that Chris Claremont was certainly guilty of Claremont speak, and absolutely true. I think Claremont definitely has a style. You can tell it's him. Them's the breaks. Best at what I do. What I do isn't very nice. All these kinds of things that Claremont would say. So that's all very true. We look at Claremont sometimes through rose-colored glasses, but he definitely had that approach. Now, in his defense, he would have the same statements, come out from Colossus, from Storm. They all had their catchphrases, they would say, and some of those got run into the ground. But in Claremont's defense, it wasn't like you could interchange the characters. You couldn't take Nightcrawler's bubbles and just move them over to Storm's and they still work. Claremont was repetitive, perhaps, with the way he had his characters talk, but at least they all talked in an individual way. Generally speaking, not 100%, but generally speaking. I got very sick of hearing them's the breaks. That got pretty old, and watching kind of that go from kind of Madeline Pryor to Kitty Pryde to kind of various characters in his run. Sage, I think, he would say things like that. Forge. There's kind of a run where that was an eye rolling or take a drink kind of statement. But Bendis has taken it to a new level. I maintain, very confidently. He amped it up a couple notches, and we definitely have Bendis speak. But so I was hoping that after kind of a fresh start, he seemed burnt out at Marvel. The Guardians run was kind of very tepid, and the X-Men run was a bit all over the map, and then just got messy toward the end. The way the Beast was written and Cyclops was not the best, and of course, as has been discussed to death, the outing of Bobby Drake by Young Gene was one of the. I use the word differently than a lot of people on YouTube, but that was a cringe moment. Not a cringe like a sarcastic, but a legitimate like, oh no, this is not how you handle that topic. So there you have it. But he went over to Superman. We were hoping for kind of a recharge of the batteries, some new things there. And his initial limited series run, we got to see the first of Bendis. The villain was fairly uninspiring, I think, and continues to be uninspiring. I'm not sure who is really loving that villain. There seems to be this feeling at DC like, oh, we've got a real hit on our hands with this Rongol. I don't even know how to pronounce that name, but no, fans are like, ugh, this guy, no, not not attractive character design, not a interesting, compelling villain. The secret history of Krypton you never knew. No, not 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 cool. So I think that's been yeah, the villain was bad, but then immediately the tinkering and the similar voice. So immediately making Lois Lane, kind of amping her up to being a streetwise reporter version of Jessica Jones, is disappointing to say the least. It's just in an attempt, and this has happened a lot, an attempt to kind of increase the character's profile. We took away a lot of the character's uniqueness. I, Lois Lane is less unique of a character today than she was 2 years ago under Tomasi and some of the other writers. She she became less interesting, less shaped as a character. That's not a euphemism for anything. I mean that purely in a well-rounded. Jesus. Okay, there we go again. Seriously, this is not some wink wink. Hey, we're talking about how people draw our boobs. I'm talking about the character is just not. There's less dimension to that. There's no way I can say that without it being a double entendre at some point. Anyway, the immediate let's get Connor, or sorry, not Connor. What am I thinking? Let's get John Kent out of there and then age him up and then kind of destroy that family. I mean, just the choices that were made were extremely disappointing coming out of Convergence. And the one really kind of thing that was good coming out of Convergence was this idea of kind of a new take on Superman. It's like let's have a child here, let's age him up a little bit, let's have him married to Lois and have the this family approach. And that was new. It felt fresh. It felt different. It felt like there was a ton of interesting stories and directions we could go with it. And there was a lot of ground there to explore. And we had, this immediate, money pairing of John Kent and Damian. You have the kids, the kids hanging out together, and you can do some stories there. And we can have him hang out with his dad. You can do some stories there. And we have Lois, who's now a reporter and a mom, and that's interesting. And there's suddenly a lot that could be done with these characters. And we instead what we got was, all right, we're going to do an immediate storyline where Clark is seen as being cheated on by Lois, who has vanished, and we're going to kind of infer that there's something wrong with his marriage and just make it very awkward for all the people in Daily Planet to hang out. We're going to take John away, and we're going to sandwich him with the very awkward, not well thought through return of the dad of Superman's dad, Kal-El, or sorry, Kal-El Superman. I don't know what I'm saying. Jor-El, thank you. I don't know who I'm thanking there. Anyway, we're going to immediately send him off with his dad. We're going to reintroduce his dad character, which hadn't really taken much, honestly, in the comics prior to all this. We're going to, as we said, have this awkwardness with Lois, and then we're going to age John up, so where the dynamic of Damian and John no longer works. And now we're going to send John off into the future to be part of Legion of Superheroes. And maybe we'll give him kind of the old school way he can travel back and forth in time. I don't know. We don't know yet what's going to happen there, but let's go ahead and have that go on. And it's like, what are you doing? It's not good writing. It's not useful. We've now destroyed all of the new story possibilities have been opened up. Sales have decreased. Maybe not everywhere. I don't know. I got to look at the numbers again. Last I saw them, they were flat, and I thought decreasing. They've definitely decreased in the shop for a lot of people I know, and there's less you can do. You reduced the character. We had a video a while back on brand destruction. This is not and I don't want to go as overboard as to saying destruction. It's not like the title is completely cratered, but it's definitely not gone up, and it's taken away the ability for other stories to be told in the future. And this is where I think writers have to be very careful and editors have to be extremely cautious about not letting a particular writer come onto a title and be subtractive to the mythology and to the stories that other people can tell. This one day Bendis will move away from Superman. There will be a new writer there, and the new writer is faced with less storytelling possibilities than if that would happen today. Now Bendis could do many things and introduce lots more elements, but Bendis basically took us backward into a version of Superman we'd already seen and dealt with. And so now the stories that have to come out along that are kind of the same. And we're wanting to build up Lois Lane's profile, but you could argue Lois Lane had a good profile before. Where was the weakness in that character where we felt we had to somehow do something more than what we already had? Why is taking away the son, kind of creating conflict in the family dynamic, a good thing? And so then that immediately segues into Event Leviathan, and that's what we're dealing with now. Somebody suggested, and I don't believe for a second, but somebody suggested that the Leviathan event, the big new masked member of Leviathan, is Lois Lane, and that's who this is. I'd have a hard time. I mean, I don't believe that's true. I'm less convinced it's not true today than I was a month ago. A month ago, I was like, absolutely no way. Today, still convinced that that's not who it is, but some seeds of doubt have opened up in my mind. We'll see how it all plays out, but that would certainly be a way of raising her profile. Unfortunately, that would also be a way of further destroying the character. You think like, hey, we're introducing this new dynamic where Lois is kind of a villain, and that's again takes away stories, takes away things from Superman and what you could do. So overall, I mean, the run, I mean, from my perspective, by the numbers, disappointing. I would say you had this big name come in, gave him a lot of things to look over. Bendis is, I think, proven. I think Marvel proved this without a shadow of a doubt, that keeping Bendis focused is a good idea, and giving Bendis lots and lots of titles is a bad idea. He will stretch himself thin, and the quality of the titles will decrease. I think that's Marvel is still kind of suffering from a bit of that, and here we are right back into it. I think that the Superman books are less. There's less you can do with them today than you could, a good year and a half ago, which is not what you hope to see at all in comics. And the characters sound the same. So unfortunately, this is a big kind of damning indictment. I didn't mean it to be as negative as it has come across, but that's just my perspective. I mean, sales flat down, characters not catching on. I mean, there's less excitement about Superman today than there was a year ago, and that's not the direction you want to go in. And so, and eventually, when perhaps Bendis takes Batman or whatever title he goes to after this, whoever comes on to write Superman is either got to kind of continue this mess or kind of retcon right out a lot of it. I once talked to a writer who's since left DC and Marvel and doing independent work, and his comment was that there was kind of a how if you watch wrestling, there's a move that a wrestler can do that really exposes the business and irritates other wrestlers, kind of like breaking the rules, the handshake rules that wrestlers have behind the scenes. That's like if you're out in the ring and a wrestler does his big signature move, the move that's supposed to really be kind of powerful for that character, and the opponent takes the move, gets hit by it, and then immediately the term is no sells it. Immediately just hops back up, shows no signs of any injury, and just keeps wrestling. Well, I mean, obviously these moves are all fake, so they're not hurting. So a wrestler could do that, but by doing that, you're kind of insulting your opponent. You're insulting the wrestler because you're basically saying, "I'm not going to sell for you. I'm not going to, say that. I'm not going to pretend this injury means anything. I'm just going to ignore it." And that diminishes the other wrestler. So I'm talking to this comic writer, and he's using the wrestling analogy, and he says, there's kind of an unspoken rule that when a new writer comes onto a book, they don't no sell what came before. They actually find a way to write their way past it, even if the run was atrocious and terrible. They don't just say, "And it was all a dream," and then just do the right thing, because that would expose kind of how these stories are told, and future creators would struggle to work with this person, and it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. You should honor the run that came before you. But the writer's saying, in some cases that's been really hard, because they come onto a book where the writer that came before them just ran it right into the ground and wrote such goofy, terrible stories that you want what you want more than anything, and the fans want it as well, is to just write and this was all, none of this happened. And in the first issue, it's revealed that like Mysterio was running a big trick, and none of what you saw actually occurred. And now we're just going to ignore all that garbage and move on. I'll tell you, some of the runs, like the current Age of X-Men, and some of the stuff definitely that's going on in Avengers right now, some of the stuff that's going on in Batman, other titles, you really want the new writer to come onto the book and go, and then the Beyonder snapped his fingers and everything was returned to 20 issues ago. All right, let's just forget any of that ever happened and move forward. And you kind of, but this is what Superman's feeling like. That's kind of where you've gotten to with a lot of things. You want a new writer to come in and go, "Hey, remember when John Kent was young and we had the family there, and there's lots of stuff to explore and do and ground to cover? Well, that's the real world. That's where we're back to now. Brainiac was running some kind of simulation. So none of what you saw over the last year and a half happened, and we're moving on." There you go. I don't know. I'm not advocating for that. I think that's a real cheap cop out. And it's, I agree with the wrestling analogy. I don't think that's healthy for the business. I think comic writers should have more respect for each other than that. But it's tough. It is tough when you hit certain runs that just deserve to be forgotten. And that's too harsh for Superman and Bendis's run. It not deserves to be forgotten. There's some interesting things he is doing there. Certainly introducing some new characters and the dynamics of how Superman fits into Metropolis. And there's some interesting things he's doing. But some of this destruction around the characters and I would, like I said, I would argue in my clumsy way that a lot of the build of Lois Lane caused more damage than benefit. So that's a shame. What do you think? Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notification. Tell me I'm crazy. I'm way overdoing it, too dramatic. That's cool. I probably am. I admit it. I'm tired. It's been a long Wednesday. Whenever this actually goes to air, I'm recording it on a Wednesday, and it's been a long Wednesday. So thanks for listening, everybody. Always appreciate it.